just another average state quarter. Nothing unusual other than the fact that it's probably a proof. But I will get back to this shortly. Hey guys, thanks for coming back. I am doing another $500 strap search. I got my 5 straps here. Sometimes things aren't always what they appear. That's what inspired me to bring out my quarter that I'll be talking about later. Looking at these were well-circulated banknotes, and you'd never expect to find as much things as I found out of this batch, and I'll get to those in a moment. I'll start off with today's tip. Don't be secretive about your collection. If you collect money, be proud of it. Tell your friends, tell people, let people know that you do that, because you'd be surprised what people have in their drawers that they have been saving and they have no use for, and they just thought it was neat. I mentioned it to a friend, and they pulled out this here. They pulled out, this is a 1985 $20 bill. It's a small head note. It does have a hard crease down the middle. Still, 1985 note is fairly rare. But what is even more remarkable about this note is that it has 7 ones in a row. 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 5. It's one of the very few notes that I have that had 7 in a row. These are extremely rare. I've seen ridiculous figures on eBay for bills like this. Whether their actual value is anywhere near that, don't know. But I do know what I paid for this bill because it was just sitting in a friend of mine's drawer. He brought it out because he knew that I collected money. So now it is now part of my collection. That's simply because I let people know. So like I said, don't be secretive. Share your information with people, and you'd be surprised what they pull out for you. All right. On with today's search. 500, like I said, looking at them, they look pretty rough. I had very low expectations, but I pulled out a stack. I'll get through these pretty quickly. First bill of note, another Where's George bill. I always get excited finding those and seeing where they've been. This one has the dark print on it. The ones with red print tend to get shredded by the Federal Reserve pretty quick, but the ones with darker print tend to make it a lot further along. So I'll look up this one and see where it's been. This one was an interesting note that I almost let slip by. Look at that first digit. It looks like somebody stamped a 2 over the first digit. I'm sure this is an aftermarket thing. Obviously, there is no... Well, I don't know. I really don't know what to make of that 2. It almost looks like it's in the same font of the 5 over here, but the 5 has reference to it being a Richmond, Virginia bill, E being the 5th letter, so that's the 5s that you see here. But looking at that 2, get it as close as I can, I just found that interesting. I have no idea what to make of it, so since it piqued my curiosity, I pulled it. Did find a bunch of star notes. This one was the roughest of the bunch. Most of them were all 2013, so I don't have high expectations for finding any low numbers or anything like that. But like I said, out of this batch of 500, quite a few star notes. Some of them are in much better condition than others. But as you can see, for one batch, especially one batch of notes like I showed, to find this many stars was pretty impressive. This one's a little rough. Found quite a few trinaries. One of the more interesting trinaries I like is the 1, 2, 3 trinary. Good a place to start as any. 1, 2, 3. This one's got all kinds of stains on it. Probably not a keeper, but trinary nonetheless. Still showing how much stuff I found out of one batch. 0s, 1s, and 8s. Found another 1, 2, 3 trinary. This one almost a binary, but almost doesn't count. Definitely a trinary. 6, 7, 8 trinary. And we get into the older bills that I found. I always pull every bill prior to 2000. 1999 and older. They're getting more and more scarce. I mean, let's face it, this bill here is at least 20 years old now. And with the average lifespan of a bill being about 6 months, finding a 20-year-old bill is getting harder and harder to do. So that's 1999. This one is 1995. Remember, when you find older bills like this, you want to be looking for 88A, 93, and 95. You want to double check right here just to make sure that they've got some kind of mark there. Where is it? Right here. If it's got a letter, it's a regular note. If it only has this small little number, that's a web note. The other thing that I found neat about this bill, I did one of these in my other series, is that it has a Y. It's a Y note. Y is one of the highest prints you're going to find. You don't see Ys too often. They're only done a couple of times. So when I find a Y note, I always want to keep that. Next note, another 1993. This one was in really nice shape. Not a web note, but still in good shape. 1988A. This one's a little rough. Not a web note. Another 88A. This one's in decent shape. And then I did find one that had 5 2s in a row. 16222220. So that was my findings. Quite a bit of bills out of that $500 batch. So now let me get back to where I started this whole thing off, which was just a quarter, state quarter. Many different types of state quarters. If you found this in circulation, the first thing you'd notice is how shiny it is, and if you know anything about coins, that particular gleam represents that it's a proof coin. It was made for collectors. Other than that, it's not supposed to be any different than anything else. And like I said, if you got this in change, with the exception of the highly reflective surface, there's nothing really to give it away from any other quarter. It happens to be a Washington D.C. You can see Washington D.C. 1791, 2008. What? A 2008 Washington D.C. quarter? Let's take a closer look at this one. The front of this quarter says 50 United States, 1 nation, 51st state proof. What is this? Now, on the internet, there is something called the Mandela effect. Some of you may be very familiar with Mandela effects. Some of you may have never heard of the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is when everybody has a false memory of something that never happened. It's called the Mandela effect because everybody remembers that Nelson Mandela died in prison in the early 90s, which isn't true. That fact was actually published in a book in Africa. I believe it was in South Africa that Nelson Mandela had died in prison in 1998 or something like that. So it's a false memory because Nelson Mandela didn't die until into the 21st century. Other Mandela effects are things like, what's Forrest Gump's favorite saying? You know, everybody says that he said life is like a box of chocolates. Fact of the matter is he said life was like a box of chocolates. There's numerous Mandela effects. You can go on and find all those that you want. But this concerns the Mandela effect that some people believe that there are 52 states. I'm convinced that Mandela effect is people just confusing the number of cards with the number of states. There being 52 cards, not 52 states. However, the Mandela effect continues by saying people think those 2 extra states were Washington, D.C. becoming a state, and somebody even reported seeing Cincinnati as a state quarter, which obviously it wouldn't be, but that's what the Mandela effect is, false memories. So, I went through and I found this quarter right here, which is a state quarter, U.S. state quarter. If I flip it over, you can see that this is for the District of Columbia. And I know it's kind of tough to see. It's real hard to focus in at tight on these. District of Columbia, that is Duke Ellington on the back of this one. The year on this one is 2009. So Duke Ellington is who is on the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. state quarter. Even though Washington, D.C. isn't a state, in 2009 they had finished with all the states. They started doing other things such as the national parks and the territories. So this is what the actual quarter looks like that's in circulation that you're going to find. Which brings me back to where I started. This is I guess you'd call it a Mandela effect quarter. It is a quarter that should not exist. 50 United States, 1 nation, 51st state proof coin is what it says. And on the back, you can clearly see it has the Washington Monument, and it has the Capitol, and it looks like it's got a cherry tree in comparison to the back of what's really on the Washington, D.C. quarter. Now, I'm sure someone had just made this coin, but it seems to be an awful lot of work to make a coin like this. And the fact that I went to a coin shop and asked about such a coin and watched the guy's expression go, I think I have one of those. And he ran in the back room and pulled it out. I picked it up from him for like $3 just because I thought it was neat. So that is my Mandela effect. Washington, D.C. state proof coin. 51st state, Washington, D.C. versus the actual Washington, D.C. coin. Is it worth anything? It's worth something to me because I think it's a neat story. Is it an unusual piece? Yes, it sure is. Do I know who made it? I've heard different rumors as to how this coin came about, but I'm more impressed by the story than anything else. So I wanted to show that this week. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.